When an intervention is properly done, what we find is that 85% of the people we intervene on go to treatment that day. That leaves 15% who do not. What I always tell families is, we hope to be in the 85%, but we prepare to be in the 15% because we never know who will go and who won't. Sometimes the people who are the toughest say yes right away, and some of the people that we say, oh, they're going to be so easy, they say no. How do we prepare to be among the 15%? Well, we do that by writing bottom lines. What is a bottom line? It's a very simple process. Each member of the treatment team wants to ask themselves 2 questions. The first question is, what have I done in the past to make it easier for the addict to stay in their addiction? And am I willing to change those behaviors today? The second question is, if the alcoholic or addict refuses treatment, what am I going to do to start taking care of myself? When we answer these 2 questions, we actually complete 2 tasks. One is that we let the alcoholic know that everything's going to change now. If they don't make a good decision, if they don't decide to get well, we're not going to make life easier for them while they stay in their addiction. As a matter of fact, the natural consequences of staying in the addiction are going to start to fall on the addict. They're going to start feeling more and more uncomfortable in their addiction, and that discomfort is going to be a motivating factor for them to go ahead and accept treatment, maybe not that day, maybe a week, 2 weeks, or a month from now. But the second thing it does for every family member and every friend involved in the intervention is it brings us back to our own personal integrity. Now we're doing the right thing because it is right. We are no longer supporting the addiction, we are only supporting recovery. We also are not sacrificing ourselves to the addiction. We are taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're healthy. And let me add that if minor children are involved, then we have to make sure in our bottom lines that we also talk about them and how we're going to protect them from the addiction. Remember, this is not a punishment. We are in no ways punishing the alcoholic or addict. As a matter of fact, when we present bottom lines, we present it in very, very loving language. It is an act of love. We are simply going to say to the addict, I love you too much to help you stay sick. That's what our bottom line is saying. We also might apologize. Oftentimes family members or friends say, I need to apologize to you because in the past I've lied to cover up your addiction. I've given you money that you could buy cocaine with, and I'm so sorry I ever did that. And I want to say to you today, I promise I will never do that in the future. So we sort of own up to what we've done. We're not really talking about the addict, we're talking about ourselves. What am I willing to do today? What am I not willing to do? Right now, let's take a moment because I'd like you to hear a sample bottom line. And we're going to hear what one sounds like in a real intervention. And I also want to note that on the website, you can download sample bottom lines as well.
Mom, I've helped you stay sick by ignoring what alcohol is doing to you for a long time and even lying to cover it up. I am so sorry. You didn't raise me to be so dishonest. I love you too much to do that anymore. I pledge today that I will only help you get well, and that requires honesty. When the kids ask what's wrong with Grandma, I won't lie to them anymore. They know anyway. They've asked me about the smell of alcohol. I'll explain that Grandma is suffering from a disease called alcoholism and that you didn't choose to have this disease. I'll explain that the illness keeps you from wanting help. I'll talk about how this disease hurts Grandma and hurts me and hurts them. I'll talk about how we must take care of ourselves until Grandma chooses to get help. For me, this means not being with you when you've been drinking. For the kids, it means no more overnight visits. This is so hard for me to say because they love their time with you. I know you'd never intentionally hurt them, but the alcohol can't be trusted. I have to protect them from what the alcohol does to you. I don't want to go through this heartbreak, Mom. There's a better way. Please come with us and accept the help we're offering you. Please take this first step today.
There are a few important points we need to make about bottom lines. First of all, always write your bottom line on a separate piece of paper. Never write it on the same piece of paper as the letter. The reason is we often never have to read our bottom lines during an intervention. So if it's on a separate piece of paper, we can keep it in a back pocket, only pull it out if we need to read it. Secondly, bottom lines, and this is very important, should never, ever be shared with the alcoholic or the addict unless they absolutely refuse to accept help that day. Now, is there a use for the bottom line if they go to treatment right away? We don't have to read it during the intervention. There really is. Jeff had talked about sending all of the letters from the intervention to the treatment team because they can be used therapeutically. Well, we also include the bottom lines because they can play a role in treatment too. If the person's been in treatment, let's say a week, 10 days, and suddenly they start having some terrifically strong cravings, they want to drink or they want to use drugs again, they'll start thinking, I've got to get out of here, and they'll come up with excuses to leave treatment early. And oftentimes when they do that, they'll also pull their releases that they signed so that their counselor could talk to family members. Now they're going to leave treatment. The counselors cannot talk to the family members, and then it's as if the family doesn't have any power to talk to the alcoholic and to convince them to stay. However, if the counselor has all of these bottom lines in his or her possession, that's a time they can take the bottom lines out of the file. They can sit down with the alcoholic and say, you know, your family supplied us with all these bottom lines because they wanted you to know that if you left treatment early, that these are the kinds of consequences that are going to occur because of that. And then the counselor and the alcoholic can sit down together and read those bottom lines. Oftentimes that's enough to change the alcoholic's mind and keep them in treatment for the rest of their stay. Let me take a moment to talk about a special population, impaired professionals. By impaired professional, I mean any person who has to be licensed to do his or her job. So for instance, we're talking about doctors, we're talking about lawyers, dentists, pharmacists, veterinarians, psychologists, family therapists, social workers, anybody that's licensed to do their job, we would call an impaired professional, somebody who has an addiction problem. When we're writing bottom lines for impaired professionals, we have extra leverage. The family can go to an organization in the state that's called a monitoring organization or a diversion program. These are programs that are set up to be very, very supportive of impaired professionals that need treatment for alcohol or other drug addiction. If you're doing an intervention on an impaired professional, for instance, let's say you're doing an intervention on your father who's a doctor, he refuses to accept help, you go through the objections, still refuses to accept help, then you can read your bottom lines and you can say, you know, Dad, a lot of people's lives are in your hands, and we're afraid that your alcoholism is really affecting your ability to do your job well. If you cannot accept treatment on your own, we're prepared to go to the monitoring organization in the state because they will then meet with you and they will ask you to accept help. And in most cases, impaired professionals realize that once the monitoring organization or the diversion program is aware of their problem, that the decision to accept help is going to be out of their hands. Because what these organizations do is, first of all, they advocate for the impaired professional. In other words, they're really on their side. They're not there to punish them. It's not punitive. But what they're saying is, you have a problem, you need help, and we're going to be here to guide you through that process. Secondly, they're going to refer them to the appropriate level of care. What kind of treatment do they need? They're going to get them into treatment. Thirdly, they're going to monitor them. So they're going to make sure that once they leave treatment, that they participate in an aftercare program and they remain sober. If the professional follows through and stays sober, then the monitoring organization is never going to turn their name into the licensure board. So in no way is it punitive. Instead, it's very, very supportive. But family members can use this as a bottom line, and it's a very, very powerful bottom line because very few professionals will refuse when they hear that. It's also a matter of integrity, because if somebody is a doctor, if somebody's a pilot, a lawyer, a judge, many, many people's lives are in their hands. So it's very important for the family to do everything in their power to move that person into recovery. Once we've gone through all the objections, we've read the bottom lines, and we still get a hard no. This person absolutely will not go to treatment today. There are usually two reasons for this. The first reason is this person just needs to feel like they're in control. They're not going to have anyone tell them that they're going to treatment today. But oftentimes you can negotiate with them and they'll choose a different day. Okay, I'll go on Tuesday, or I'll go next Saturday. And if they really give the group a promise, their word, I'm going to do this on Tuesday, we find that oftentimes they do follow through and they make good on their promise. The second reason is they simply do not believe the bottom lines. And this is not necessarily surprising, because oftentimes alcoholics and addicts have been repeatedly threatened by family members, and those threats have not been followed through. So in essence, we've actually taught them not to believe us. And when they hear our bottom lines, they're going to test the water. They're going to test us. So it's important when you write your bottom line, every member of the team needs to test themselves. Will I follow through? Is this something that I'm willing to follow through? Can I follow through? Because if it isn't, we need to change our bottom line. Once we've read our bottom line to the alcoholic or to the addict, we must follow through. When they realize that we're serious, that we're keeping our promise to them, that we're being honest with them, most alcoholics and addicts will eventually accept treatment. It might be a number of days or a number of weeks, but it's only a very, very small minority that will hang tight to that no.